What's going on, everybody? Zack Rosenblatt here with Mike Kaye for the latest episode of the No Huddle Show. We're here at NovaCare Complex. There's some news to actually talk about now beyond the games coming up. The Eagles suffered their first major injury of the season. They can't go more than 1 week without it happening. It's unfortunate to who it's happening to. It's Malik Jackson. He suffered a Liz Frank injury to his foot. He's almost definitely going to be out for the season. They signed him to be like the best defensive tackle that Fletcher Cox has ever played with. In theory, it was kind of a journey to a comeback for him after he had a bad year with the Jaguars last year. They signed him to a 3-year deal, and he'll be back here next year. They can't really afford to cut him based on the way the contract is structured. But they signed Akeem Spence from the Miami Dolphins. But what was you obviously have a little more connection to Malik, but what was your reaction when you saw how he? Because we talked after the game how it was one of those things again where it's like he seems okay in the locker room, but clearly.
Yeah, he was fine. He wasn't fine, but he acted like he was fine and didn't really.
It sounded like he knew that it was bad too. Mike Garafolo reported that he walked out of the locker room to tell his teammate about it or something.
Yeah, Derek Gunn asked him what the injury was, and he was basically like, "It's football, it's an injury." But he stood there and he took the questions, and I could tell something. Like he was just being very guarded with the way the Eagles handle things with injuries, you're typically guarded anyway.
It's possible they told him not to say anything, yeah.
Yeah, which is what I assumed.
Yeah.
But, it's tough for him because I know him pretty well, and I know this was like a year for him that he really just wanted to show, hey, I'm the guy. Even before he signed here, I made the connection to Philly because I thought he made a ton of sense.
I remember he told you in the preseason that he wanted to play in the preseason in part to prove that he belonged among these guys or whatever.
Yeah, I think he was very humbled by what happened in Jacksonville last year. He was thrilled to not have to be the guy here, and it's unfortunate. He's a guy that has been very complimentary of his teammates. He loves being around this defensive line group. He really respects Fletcher Cox. He was looking forward to kind of having a career resurgence here, and it's unfortunate. But he'll bounce back or he'll come back and try to make the most of it. And I'm sure that his contract will probably be renegotiated based on the injury and missing this year. But
he'll be back here next year.
Yeah, he'll be back. And I think, especially with Timmy Jernigan being on a 1-year deal, and he's
going to have a prove-it season now, pretty much. Yeah.
So, with that said, though, I think people are discounting Timmy Jernigan a little bit. Yeah, they brought him in on a cheap deal, but throughout the training camp and in the preseason, I thought he was probably their most overachieving defensive tackle. He played very, very well. And so he'll just fill the spot. He's actually more of a natural number 2 to Fletcher Cox anyway, because he can play one technique and he can play the run really well while Fletcher rushes the passer and plays 3 technique, because Malik's also a 3 technique. So they were going to have to move him and Fletcher around. Malik wasn't used to playing 1 technique, which, basically a nose tackle in a 4-3 defense, if that helps you. But, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how they respond to this, because like last year, you don't have a true pass rusher next to Fletcher Cox.
Yeah, I think so. So you were saying how Jernigan is technically a better fit, but I think part of the reason why they wanted Jackson in the first place because they wanted to be able to not have to change everything up on that D-line on pass rushing downs.
Right.
Because Jernigan's not really a pass rusher. He had a sack, and it was one of the more important plays. We talked about it a lot after the game. Mm-hmm. And guys have talked about it this week since then. But part of the appeal of bringing Malik, and they've even talked about this, is that they wouldn't have to put Brandon Graham on the inside or Vinny Curry or Barnett or whatever. Mm-hmm. They don't have Michael Bennett anymore, who was pretty good at that. And so now all of a sudden you're back to the situation they were in last year, and they didn't do it as much last year, but the year before they especially were putting Brandon Graham inside. Mm-hmm. And he had one of his better. He had his best sack season actually when he was doing that. Which he had his worst sack season, one of his worst last year when he only had 4. Mm-hmm. But it's just gonna be interesting to see how they play this out. Another benefit of having Jackson was that Cox maybe wouldn't have had to play 100% of the snaps.
Right.
Maybe even give him 5 snaps off, and you can't really do that now. Because Jernigan's not the type that can anchor the defensive line. And I will say Hassan Ridgeway, I know they really like a lot. And he played about as much as Jernigan in week 1, which is at least interesting. So I wouldn't discount I wouldn't say Jernigan's going to get every single snap in that second defensive tackle spot. I think it might be a pretty even split between him and Ridgeway.
Well, and we should say Fletcher Cox doesn't play 100% of the snaps anyway in that rotation. But he's going to take on the majority of the snaps, as he always does. Like last year, he played 73% of the snaps. Yeah, Hassan Ridgeway's a guy that I've liked since he was a prospect at Texas. They feel really good about him. He's an upgrade over Haloti Ngata last year. He's an upgrade over Trayvon Hester.
I'll say they could really use Hester right now, though.
Right, correct.
But they had to cut him, so.
Yeah, so what I'll say is this. Doug Peterson this morning said that Akeem Spence is going to play some really strong minutes.
Yeah, I've never heard minutes before with football.
It was a weird...
It's like a basketball phrasing.
Right. As the fourth defensive tackle.
Yeah.
That he made that
declaring it is interesting,
clear, which is something that he does not do, which I think is interesting. Akeem Spence, obviously... so he was cut by the Dolphins.
Which isn't a great sign.
Well, it's a new regime, so you got to kind of get that.
Yeah.
They've been following. I mentioned this before he signed. He was a good fit because he fit into the Joe Douglas philosophy of that circle of trust and being a guy that had some familiarity with the coaching staff. Matt Burke, who's the special assistant to defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz, was his defensive coordinator in Miami. Spence is well traveled. He's played for Tampa Bay. He's played for Detroit. He's played for Miami. But he was relatively productive last year. He had 32 pressures last year, according to Pro Football Focus, I believe.
Yeah, 32 pressures. He had 42 tackles, 2 sacks, and 32 pressures.
Yeah, he's not the passer.
Didn't grade out that greatly, but you don't need a star as your fourth defensive tackle. So.
Right. I think
he's a veteran.
I think the thought process here should be hey, they've got a guy who's got a ton of starting experience, and he's going to be the fourth guy. You know what I mean? I think that's the takeaway there. But I'm telling you, I think they're really excited about Hassan Ridgeway. They've been praising him since he got here. Jim Schwartz isn't a guy that really singles guys out. If you ask him, hey, who stood out here?
If you ask about a specific guy, he won't say anything.
And he'll name 45 guys at once. But he has gone out of his way to praise him. And he looked good. I rewatched the game yesterday. I thought Hassan got some pretty good pressure throughout his performance. And again, I think him being your third defensive tackle, you could do much, much worse. The Eagles came into this season with the best defensive tackle rotation in the league. I still think they have probably one of the top 10 defensive tackle rotations in the league. Obviously,
when Fletcher Cox is in it, right? Just there, you do. But yeah,
last year was pretty.
But yeah, I mean, you brought this up, the fact that they were able to get Tim. They should be thankful that almost not that Jernigan had the injury that he had, but that he had no market because. He's it's not saving their season, but he's helping them quite a bit right now.
And that man is motivated.
Yeah.
Something I'll also give you from the locker room, we were all waiting to talk to Timmy Jernigan, and Jernigan was taking his time. I think
after the game, you mean?
Yeah, I think he knew Malik had an injury and didn't want to kind of bask in the...
I mean, I don't know about that, because he doesn't really like talking to us in general, so...
Well, but we were talking to Malik about the sack, and Timmy kind of just walked away right after that.
Yeah.
I
still lean towards him just not wanting to talk to us in general, though.
Maybe. I mean, but I also think he probably knew about the injury.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, so Hassan Ridgeway. So I was going to say, I think this makes the importance of Vinny Curry having a bounce back season even more important now because he's probably going to play more than he would have. I forget what his snap numbers were for Sunday, but he was a heavy part of the rotation for sure. He had a bad year in Tampa last year, and that's why he's back here. They cut him. He had a weird hairdo in the locker room. I tweeted a photo of it.
What was weird about it, Zack?
I said it looked like he had a fox on his head, and the tail was just sticking out. Someone said Pomeranian, and there's a lot of funny gifs getting tweeted at me. It was a choice, is what I'll say. He normally has the cornrows, and I guess he just let it out. I don't know if that's permanent hairdo or whatever, but he's a character anyway, and he had a pretty good training camp, I thought. But they really need him to step up now. Yeah, for sure. I mean, his big play against Washington, he had a really impressive run stop. The play went for 1 yard, but he surged and got through kind of the trenches, and I think it was Darius Guice that he dropped. But Schwartz is pretty complimentary of his contribution to the Jernigan sack too. Yeah. It was a stunt, and Curry brought the pressure and allowed Jernigan to get free. Jernigan actually beat two linemen and got the sack. But, I think Vinny Curry is very important to this team moving forward, especially with Jackson out. Because if you're going to
manufacture sacks now because you don't have a guy who can win one-on-one. Curry's going to be... You're going to have to use Curry as kind of like a rover, and you're going to have to move him around and what have you. But he's motivated too. I think like that's the big key here is he and Jernigan are very motivated. They're coming off terrible seasons. They have one-year deals. They want to make the most of it. They want to expand their career. They don't want to be role players for very long. And I think, again, if you look at it, the starting Super Bowl defensive tackles are the starting defensive tackles right now. Like, so, you know, and I mean, they have the majority of the group from the Super Bowl front.
Hey, Chris Long was just hanging out there doing podcasts with Ryan Russillo.
Who, by the way, apparently, according to Doug Peterson, they were not interested in.
Yeah, because they were just looking at defensive tackles.
Right.
I think everybody's going to go to Chris Long immediately every time there's an injury in that line, but he doesn't seem like someone who wants to play any more football.
Yeah, I think that time.
Which is fine. I mean, he had a great career. Just stay on the defensive line for a second. Were you surprised that Deshaun Hall was inactive on Sunday?
A little. Because
it seemed like, so clearly, preseason doesn't matter as much as we both have said it doesn't, but like he was the best player out there, and Josh Sweat didn't really do anything, and he was the fourth guy. So
I think from a numbers standpoint, they wanted. I mean, you got to look at it too. Like, who else were you going to make inactive? I guess maybe they felt like TJ. Because Zack Brown doesn't play special teams typically, so maybe you want TJ Edwards to fill that spot at linebacker. I don't know. I mean, I can't criticize them for it, but I was a little surprised.
I know, just surprising. So do you think he's active on Sunday night? Because it sounded like Spence is going to be active.
It depends on what they do with that 53rd spot that's open.
True, because they cut Alex Ellis.
Yeah, it depends on that, and I would keep an eye on the secondary for that one. They'll probably make the move for the
So do you think they're just going to run with two tight ends this season? Because they did play, Andre Dillard, I believe, played 4 or 5 snaps as the inline blocker.
I think they're going to look at like what they have and what injuries they have. And
it might be a shuffle back and forth with Perkins and Ellis, too.
Yeah, there's a thing, too. So let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah.
The Patriots used to do this with Nate Ebner, who was a safety. They would cut him, put him on the practice squad, bring him back. So they basically had a 54th roster spot. So you could fill it with another practice guy and kind of move guys around. The Eagles aren't worried about somebody claiming Alex Ellis. And the thing is, too, is they've got insurance for that, too, because they also have Josh Perkins on the practice squad as well. Yeah. So what they can do is, and I wrote about this last week before they even cut Alex Ellis or brought him up, they can view that as like a situational 53rd spot. If they need a corner, they can call a guy up from the practice squad. There's Craig James on there. If they need a running back, Boston Scott, you know what I mean? So they're using that as a utility spot. And keep in mind, so a lot of people have asked me this question. When you sign somebody off an external practice squad, you owe them 3 weeks of salary, regardless of if you cut them or not.
It prevents teams from just claiming guys and cutting them.
Well, yeah, it's from like a strategic standpoint. Like if you were playing the Vikings and you got a guy off the Vikings practice squad, but if you sign a guy internally from a practice squad, you don't owe. Yeah. There's no strings attached,
which is why you see the back and forth a lot.
Right. So this could be something that happens throughout the season with Alex Ellis. I've heard some people say, "Oh, aren't you worried about exposing him to waivers?" Well, I mean, if he was on the practice squad, somebody could sign him off. Yeah. So it's not like, what's he going to do? Make 3 special teams blocks, and somebody's like, "Oh my God, I got to have him."
He did play a lot on special teams. I think he had like 20 snaps or something like that on special teams,
and that's what he's known for.
Yeah.
Too, so.
Yeah. All right. Well, so we touched on Spence a little bit, but so I guess how big of a role do you think he plays this season? Maybe not right away. I would imagine he plays much right away. But
I think the first month of the season, you're going to see Graham and Curry inside a little bit.
And then as he gets more comfortable, maybe you change that a little bit.
So the thing is like defense is a little bit easier to learn than offense because there's only so many coverages, there's only so many rushes, and also he has Matt Burke to kind of help him with terminology. Yeah. Like if he said, "Oh, this is called Twizzler in Miami, but it's called Snickers in Philadelphia," you can kind of ease it up. You know what I mean? Like, or if something's called Top Gun here, it's called Point Break here.
They get what you mean.
You get what I mean.
I think they know what 2 different words mean.
Whatever. Zach, you are literally the worst. But so my point is like having that familiarity with a coach who's actually, been an authoritative figure Like, not just as a position
coordinator,
Yeah, not just a position coach, but a defensive coordinator. I think that helps. I think Akeem Spence, he's 6'1", 303 pounds. It's a pretty good fit for a 3 technique and a wide 9 front. I'd imagine that he could play 1 and 3 technique, which is important because the Eagles don't really... They play both. So you're going to move guys around. Fletcher Cox is going to play nose tackle and he's going to play 3 technique. Jernigan's going to do the same. And then Hassan and Akeem have to do the same thing. So I think they're in good space, like in good shape. I think Akeem's basically the talent level of Trayvon Hester, but has way more experience. So if you want to look at it that way, I think it's a good move.
All right, so before we get into a little more fun, wanted to cover 2 different rotations, which I think have been like the underlying storyline since and during the game. And that is the running back rotation and the cornerback rotation. Which one do you want to hit first?
I don't know. You're the EP. Go.
I'm asking you which one to pick.
I don't care. We can talk about either one.
All right. Thanks for your decisiveness.
I don't know anything I say. You got to criticize. So
Jesus. Well, you just made it worse.
What? Why don't we talk about Top Gun or Point Blank?
Oh my God. All right, you're fired. All right. So we can talk about the running backs first. So we both were confused about the amount of Darren Sproles that they played on Sunday.
I think surprised, more confused, but yeah. I mean. Go on. Sorry. Didn't mean to cut you off.
But I don't know. The numbers wise, so Miles Sanders and Darren Sproles had the same amount of touches, and Jordan Howard had the least amount of them. I mean, Corey Clement was basically not in part of the offense. I think he played a couple snaps. Well, there's one play where he was like a fullback.
Yeah, they did a couple of two-back.
So he's pretty clearly not a part of the actual like 3-man rotation. Which we both thought maybe he would still be at least part of the offense, but he's clearly not. But like. I don't think it's going to play out the same way it did in week 1, but I also didn't think it would play out that way to begin with. Like, I did a story on the rotation, and so Jordan Howard and Sanders only had their touches on first or second down, so Sproles was exclusively the third down back pretty much, and he didn't convert on any of his touches on that down, by the way. Jordan Howard didn't have any of the short yardage carries. Miles Sanders had 4 negative rushing plays. So... I don't think the way they used them was maybe the best way to use their skill sets on Sunday. The way they've been raving about Jordan Howard, it seems like they're going to play him more. I think they should. Miles Sanders, his numbers aren't good, but he still showed a lot of promising stuff. You know, he had that 19-yard run, which was really good. He had a touchdown taken back by a holding call from Arcega-Whiteside, which, I mean, it was iffy, but it was probably a hold. But the point being, it was a good run. And Mike Rowe is a particular raved without even being asked about his pass protection. And he's done a lot better in blitz backups. And I think that's going to get him on the field more. I think, even just based on the snaps, it's pretty clear he's the number 1 running back. Yeah,
I agree. I think they went with Sproles because he's the guy that they trust.
Yeah.
And the guy who knows the offense
the other 2
best.
are new guys, yeah.
I think they were trying to get him in rhythm too. He told me after the game that he did feel rusty until kind of the second half. And then they had that one run. They had that one drive, the one that ended with the Jeffrey touchdown, where they basically just ran down the field and got that offensive line going. Once they established the run, everything opened up for the offense. My biggest issue with the rotation was it didn't seem like there was any logic to the way they were rotating. At one point during a commercial break, Jordan Howard, or I think it was a TV timeout, Jordan Howard was in the huddle, and then once the TV timeout ended,
they pulled him out, yeah.
I have never audibly laughed so hard in a press box in my entire life.
Well, because at that point, Howard had barely played, so he didn't get his first carry until, I think it was 13-minute mark of the second quarter. Only got 2. Then he didn't get his next one until, I believe, the fourth quarter, actually. So.
And they were 2 impressive runs, too, so you were like...
And then he had a couple more, like, he was running the ball really well, and almost like, he almost became the forgotten man, which you and I have both been saying, like, he's good enough to be a part of the rotation at least.
Yeah, he had 7 carries for 44 yards, so he averaged 7.3 yards per carry, which is, I don't need to tell you, it's impressive.
That's good.
Yeah.
Hashtag analysis.
I think what they wanted to do was kind of get, so Sproles is the proven guy, but he's older and he didn't have a preseason.
Yeah,
so you wanted to get him
going.
That
was his preseason in a way.
And then Miles Sanders is a young guy and he hasn't played in 2 games, so you wanted to get him going. Jordan Howard, you know what you have in him, I think. That could be the logic. That would be the logic that would make sense to me. What I will say is I don't agree that Clement isn't going to be part of the rotation. I think they're going to switch it up for every single game. I actually think...
So you think there will be weeks where like Sproles doesn't play that much?
Yeah, pretty much. And I actually think this game is going to be one of them this upcoming.
So you think Clement, like how many snaps do you think he gets this?
I'll give you a percentage. Probably better.
Yeah, true.
15%. Like okay. I think they
so like a small he's the third guy in the 3-man.
Yeah, they'll do a package. Like I think Sproles will play in this one, but I think he's going to be primarily a punt returner here.
Well, so if Clement doesn't so then you'll probably just concede that he's not a part of the rotation, I guess. Then, right?
For now, yeah.
Yeah, until somebody gets hurt.
Yeah. Well, and we'll talk about it later and why I think that later on. That's what you call a tease. When we talk about the Falcons a little bit, but. Yeah, I think Howard can have a huge game against the Falcons based on what I watched from last week. But yeah, rotation-wise, I kind of buy the logic of, hey, we'll do it based on game plan.
But Sanders being the constant, pretty much?
Yeah, I think he's like, if you do a Venn diagram of touches, he's going to be the center of that. Yeah. You know what I mean? He's going to be the underlying thing throughout.
And Alshon Jeffrey was one of the most effective rushers technically on the team.
Yeah, that's true. He thought that it was so
it kind of stinks for him. I mean, it's a touchdown, so whatever. But like at the end of the year, so that's going to be his receiving stats. He's just never going to have that touchdown in his career stats now.
Well, I mean, I feel bad for Carson because that doesn't count. Like he has a bonus tied to touchdowns. He didn't throw a touchdown there. He didn't. So you see everybody comparing the stats from week 1. Dak threw 4 touchdowns. Carson only threw 3. Yeah. So that's why the stats
clearly
lie.
Worse.
Yeah, the stats lie.
Just kidding. All right, so the cornerbacks. We talked about this a little after the game. They didn't have a great game. They did like a weird rotation where Rasul started. Sidney didn't. He played like intermittently, and then he started the second half. And Ronald Darby was on a pitch count, so Douglas was still playing a little bit. Maddox came in and out because he had some cramps. He didn't play well. It was I don't know if alarming is the right word. It was week 1, so you shouldn't overreact yet because we need to see how they look going forward. But it wasn't a problem. Jim Schwartz is pretty critical of those guys. Mm-hmm. He kind of, I don't know if blame is the right word, but he was like the reason why the pass rush wasn't doing as well is because the coverage wasn't holding up. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty brutal honesty from him, honestly. What was it, when you heard him saying all that stuff? Like just openly, it's trying to motivate those guys, I'm sure. But
100% correct. After rewatching the game yesterday, 100% correct. Because the defensive line actually got pressure, they just weren't able to finish
because they'd be able to get the ball out quickly, right?
Yeah, the Rasul, the touchdown to McLaurin, Terry McLaurin. Rasul got beat like a drum. Like, it was single coverage, they sent a blitz, and McLaurin just...
Like, did the safety blitz?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why there was no safety help
there. And Jim Schwartz brought this up. He said, everybody wants a blitz until somebody throws a
going
deep
over
ball.
The top, yeah.
Which is true, and I'm actually...
People only want to blitz when it works. That's
right. Like, I'm a fan of blitzing, but I'm also a fan of the way that Schwartz handles the blitz. Like, it's not like every single time. It's like when a show has a really good cameo, but if you have one every week, it loses its specialness. You know what I mean?
So, although Jim Johnson used to blitz quite a bit.
Yes.
It was different. They had different defense. That defense was stacked.
Yeah, they also didn't have a wide 9 where you had to stop the run the way that these safeties and these linebackers do. So, Rasul one-on-one against a speed threat is never going to be a good matchup. But then Sidney Jones also got beat deep, and
on the one that Case Keenum overthrew him. And Case Keenum, Kirk Cousins, all the same.
Whatever. They both played for the Vikings.
That's what I'm saying. All the same.
And also having to watch the Vikings yesterday too. It's in my brain. But Darby was the guy that stood out to me.
Like in a good way, you're saying?
No.
Oh, okay. Wow, really? He didn't hold up when you watched the film?
No, I mean, like, his coverage was fine. I'm concerned about his tackling. Like,
oh yeah,
he had one stop early that I was like, oh,
was he the one that missed on? Sendejo missed the worst, but was he the one that missed on the Vernon Davis?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, where he jumped over him.
Or no, that was over Maddox.
That was over Maddox. Okay.
Yeah,
that was bad too.
But
bad tackling.
I think it was over Maddox.
It was bad tackling from the secondary in general, by the way.
Yeah, but I think it was over Maddox. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sorry. Lots going on in this brain. But he had a couple of missed tackles there. He had the one near pick, which was an impressive play, but he dropped it. So I called him a sorry Samuel.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Somebody else thought that was funny though.
This one guy thought it was funny.
This one guy thought it was funny.
You only need one member.
I think Mike Kist was the one that thought that was funny.
There you go.
But the concern for me is he going to have to be eased in for a really long time? Because when healthy, he's their best corner. And you're not going to get into a rhythm physically unless you're constantly out there. You know what I mean? So that's my concern. Like, I think Darby played relatively well to expectations, considering he didn't have a preseason or anything. But I'm concerned about the rotation. I'm concerned about it because it's not, especially when you only have 4 guys. If one of those guys gets injured and it's not Rasul, you're screwed because... if it's not, because Rasul can only play outside.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So
you're making him a safety finally. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? But I believe that they will look into the cornerback market before this game.
I will say Orlando Scandrick's still out there, but the fact that they haven't brought him back yet doesn't really bode well for that.
Not a good sign.
I mean, I don't think they weren't as high on him as everybody thought they might have been.
Yeah, I don't think that's happening. But but
I mean, it would make more sense to bring a veteran in than a young guy.
I agree.
Maybe it's not him. Like, what's the dude's name that worked out? Bodie Calhoun. Is he a corner or a safety?
Yeah, he's a corner. Well, he can play safety,
play both.
But he's a nickel corner. Primarily, like you don't want him outside.
Yeah, yeah. My mic just did that too.
Yeah,
struggles in here today.
Yeah. So, but audio quality hopefully is good.
I don't know if you were in the press conference. I made the mistake of opening Instagram, and I clicked. I thought my volume was all the way down. Doug wasn't. It was in the middle of a boring answer from Doug. I'm gonna be honest. And I clicked on somebody's story, and you know that the heart thing that there's like it makes the.
I'm sure I do. This description's not very helpful.
It's like the love filter on Instagram, and it was played at full volume, and I started fumbling.
Yeah, no, I saw it. I made a face.
Nobody else reacted. I was surprised.
I think they were enchanted by the answer that Doug was giving.
All right, so we'll put a bow on the last game with this quick activity I wanted to do, or I'm going to call it trend or outlier, or stuff that happened in the game, and you say if it's a trend of something that you should either worried about or might happen going forward, or if it was just an outlier and don't read too much into it. We already talked about a few of these, but so the first one I had was Darren Sproles as the number 1 or number 2 running back. You have that as an outlier, probably, right?
An outlier, yeah. Why are you going to answer for me?
Well, because you pretty much said that.
Yeah,
right?
It's an outlier.
And then Jordan Howard, he had 0 short yardage runs.
Outlier.
Yeah. Nelson Aguilar only had 2 catches for 11 yards, and he wasn't really a big part of the offense.
So
that's an interesting one, I think.
From a sense of he wasn't a big part of he did a lot of stuff away from the ball.
Yeah, but in terms of targets,
production-wise,
production.
Yeah. I think it's an outlier because I think
it's closer to the middle than a definite thing.
Right. I think speaking to Alshon Jeffrey after the game, he's like every game is going to be different, and I think that's why this offense is so intriguing because. You really can't nail down a guy. I told people to avoid running backs in this offense most of the summer because you never know. You know what I mean? I think Deshaun had 154 yards. I still don't think he leads the team in receiving yards.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's still a fair prediction, but it's your percentage of your confidence in that is probably less.
Right.
Yeah. Next one I had is Case Keenum threw for 380 yards. So just the idea of this secondary being one of the worst in the NFL, basically. Because if you're giving up more than 350 yards per game, that's a trend. So you're concerned about. So do you think Howie makes a move for somebody in maybe safety or corner at some point this season?
I don't think he'd make a move for a safety. I think
they don't really value safeties.
I think corner is an interesting spot. I also think you have to kind of wait.
Or you can wait till Mills and LeBlanc get back.
Yeah, I think you also have to let Darby kind of adjust. I think that's the thing too.
We'll say Julio Jones this week. And for all the crap Jalen Mills gets from this fan base, he was always good at the red zone. Mm-hmm. And Julio Jones, that's where you need to shut him down. So
Darby's been good against him too. So
I think he was the one that stopped him during week 1 last year. Actually.
Yeah, he threw him outside.
Yeah, threw him out of bounds. The defense only had 1 sack, so the pass rush has an issue, I guess.
That's an outlier. I think they're gonna. They showed me enough that in that game that if they have even a little bit better coverage, they're gonna get the quarterback.
Yeah, Jason Peters being dominant because he had a really good week 1.
Yeah, he did have.
He didn't give up a single pressure, and he played every snap. Trend. So you think he's back?
Yeah, I think 2 years removed from the major injury is a big deal for him.
All right, that's all I had. Unless there's any off the top of your head.
Something I'm concerned about: Nigel Bradham. I
was thinking about him. I wasn't trying to frame it though, because
will Nigel Bradham continue to be?
Nigel Bradham struggles. Yeah.
Will Nigel Bradham continue to be the weak link of the defense?
Trend. Yeah.
He missed several tackles. Didn't look that great in coverage. If he's your middle linebacker, you need more out of him.
I wonder as the season moves along if it becomes more like Camus and Zack Brown than Nigel Bradham.
I'm going to make not to be dramatic, but I'm going to make a bold prediction. Camus Grugier-Hill will be the starting middle linebacker by midseason.
So Bradham won't play much, is what you're saying.
Well, he will, but he just.
But they usually play one linebacker more.
He won't be the dime linebacker.
Yeah. So he'll play, but he'll play like the Camus snaps from last year kind of thing.
Correct.
Yeah. All right. So and then we did get a bunch of YouTube comments on to read, but before we do that, I know you watched some of the film on the Falcons, so we can look ahead a little bit. Do more in our preview later this week. But what are some things that stood out real quick?
So speaking about outliers, right? This game was bizarre. So within the first 18 minutes of the game, the Vikings blocked a punt, got a pick on Matt Ryan, stopped a kick return within the 15, and forced a fumble.
Yeah.
Then they ran down the Falcons' throat like all game, and they used a rotation. I mean, Dalvin Cook was great, but the rookie running back that they had a huge game too. You're going to be able to run on this team and run really, really well.
I am.
Well, you'd probably get at least 2 yards.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah. This was
all right. I'll do that and retire.
If you look at the way that the Eagles' run defense performed against the Redskins last week, it was the exact opposite. Like, this is a porous Falcons defense. They looked undersized. They didn't look very physical. Deion Jones got ran over like 4 times.
And he's supposed to be their best player.
Yeah, he is. He still made plays, but he took on a lot of contact. Kirk Cousins only threw like a dozen times
for like 98 yards.
Yeah, he was not asked to be the guy. Special teams is huge, and I kind of wanted to ask Peterson about it, but like I felt like he would just give me a vanilla answer, so I passed on it. But during the Chip Kelly era, this special teams unit was a weapon. Like Fipp got guys to the punter almost like weekly. And the reason why I think Darren Sproles is not going to be heavily into the running back rotation is because I think they're going to focus his efforts on punt returning, because I think he will have a lot of opportunities.
And he is 35. Like, he can't play 3 different positions.
Right. So you want to focus him on something. That's why I think he will be heavily focused on that. It's also another reason why I think you'll see Alex Ellis potentially get picked up again to the 53 again, potentially.
For this week, you're saying?
Yeah, for this week. It wouldn't shock me. I mean, if they didn't, whatever. But
either will or they won't.
Yeah, they basically. There's an option. But I think Jordan Howard can have a huge game. I think that this is a really good opportunity for Miles Sanders, especially in prime time. The reason why I think you use Corey Clement is I think you can come up with a package where he gets on a linebacker pretty easily. As much as they used Darren Sproles, they didn't use him much as a receiver. And I think this is a big opportunity. I think that was part of the strategy. I think they really wanted to focus.
Jordan Howard had a couple catches.
Right. Impressive catches, too.
His first touch was a catch, which was like... Anytime you tweet that about him catching, Bears fans immediately come to the mentions. It's hilarious.
Well, and he really worked on his hands, and we talked about it all throughout the offseason. They forced him to kind of be a receiving back, and I think that helped him out a lot. He worked a lot on the jugs machines, but I do think Corey Clement will get at least 2 or 3 catches in this game, because I think there'll be opportunities. From a defensive perspective, the Vikings blitzed and put pressure on Matt Ryan, like, from the jump. They got pressure early and often. That's what this team's going to need to do. The coverage was fine, but it was really the pass rush that got there. They hit Matt Ryan a lot. And I think that's what the Eagles are going to need to do. They're going to have to send Malcolm Jenkins on blitzes. Look, Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley are really good wide receivers. and you've got to be mindful of that. But Devontae Freeman's fallen off a cliff as far as production's
Ito
gone.
Smith isn't scaring me either.
Yeah,
so.
Ito had like one really good rod, but you can manufacture the tempo and momentum of this game with your front seven. If you're the Eagles, that's what you have to do. You have got to force pressure. You have to get to him. I think Brandon Graham, if he's moving inside, is going to have a really good game because Chris Lindstrom's injured. I believe he's the right guard. And their first round pick. So this is an opportunity for this Eagles team to create pressure. The Falcons line isn't very good anyway. Austin Hooper, their tight end's not very good. So I don't think you really need to focus too heavily on that. If he's the guy beating you, then you're probably winning the game. And then, their DBs are not good. So you should be able to throw on them. I mean, realistically.
So the week started out, it was like a pick'em, and now the Eagles are 1.5 point favorites on the road.
Oh, the last time I checked, it was 1, so they've gone up.
I don't know if this is the most updated because at Novacare Complex doesn't let you go on the betting website, so I had to go to some other website. But the point being, like, clearly people are souring on the Falcons after that Week 1 performance. They are strangely constructed. Like, they didn't really do that much this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, they took care of their own. They re-signed Grady Jarrett, Julio, and what I'll say is this. If you were counting on the Vikings game being the template for the Falcon season, you're completely fooling yourself.
I think they're going to be better, you're saying?
Oh my God, the Falcons are a good team. The Vikings are a really good team. Eagles fans are going to be
defensively, they are at least, yeah.
Yeah, but
because Kirk, I'm not huge on still.
Yeah, I'm not either. But they have Thielen,
they have weapons
Diggs,
and Dalvin Cook, yeah.
Healthy Dalvin Cook,
healthy Dalvin
awesome.
Cook.
But what I'll say is this: I think the Falcons are good. They were on the road. Week 1, there's always a weird performance in Week 1 by 3 or 4 teams that you expect to be good. I think they bounce back from this. That said, coming into this game, the Falcons need this win more than the Eagles do. Almost certainly.
Yeah.
Because if they fall to
0-2 is tough.
Especially when you have the Saints in your division. And so, I mean, I think this is going to be a really tough matchup. We'll give our predictions later in the week, but when we fully preview the game on Friday, but don't sleep on them. Like, think about this. Again, blocked punt, interception, kick return stop within the 15-yard line, and a forced fumble within the first 18 minutes. That's not going to happen on a weekly basis. Especially against
pretty insane if it did.
Especially against this Eagles team who has struggled to create turnovers over the last couple of years.
And didn't create any last week.
So my strategy, correct. My strategy, I'm using Brandon Graham in the middle, like on third down. Like,
I think they're going to. Yeah.
Because I think you can trust Vinny Curry to get pressure. You have to let Josh Sweat develop. Josh Sweat drew a holding call. All the defensive ends had moments last week.
Brandon Graham graded out pretty well on Pro Football Focus.
He broke up a screen.
He had 6 pressures, I think.
He broke up a screen to Vernon Davis that was super impressive for a 4-yard loss. He looked like a Brandon Graham at 25.
That's like last year at this time. I was questioning whether he still had it because he looked a little slower, and it was clearly his ankle was bothering him. Yeah. And Derek Barnett looked pretty good too.
Yes, he bull rushed the heck out of down the pen. And I think he'll have opportunities in this game. I think that right tackle situation is going to be really interesting for the Falcons. So look for Brandon Graham to
have a big game.
Yeah, he's going to make some money, even though he already is making money.
All right, we'll close out with some YouTube comments. We got a bunch this week. Keep them coming. All right, we got Marie DeBooth, who's a frequent commenter on our YouTube videos, and we appreciate it. She said, totally took me by surprise how many snaps Sproles had today. Took us by surprise, too. And there's a guy that responded and said, me too, bro. Carlos Turner.
Carlos Turner.
Smith and Wesson says, you could tell they were rusty in the first half, but man, give Carson the credit he deserves for that comeback. Oh, we gave him credit. Didn't we?
Yeah.
I disagree with you, Smith. Carlos Turner. I want Jordan Howard to be our bell cow. Just jumping over Miles Sanders in the depth chart.
Look, I think Miles made some rookie mistakes.
Yeah, of course he did. It's his first game.
And I spoke to Jordan Howard after the game about it, and Jordan Howard said, you got to live to see the next play. You've got to know that those things are going to happen, but you got to bounce back. And I think Miles Sanders will bounce back.
Yeah.
Especially in this game, because Falcons can't stop the run.
All right, this guy, Harlem Cowboy, wrote something I don't really understand, but it basically declares that Dak Prescott's going to be MVP, I guess. Good for him.
The Dallas offense?
Thanks, yeah, that was a good one.
The rumors are true. We do really hate each other.
People are talking. All right. Okay, I don't need to read that one. All right. Peter Poet says more than half the NFL teams have a winless season so far in 2019. That's true because there's a tie.
Yeah.
The Cardinals and the Lions, the worst game.
I meant to bring this.
It was a good game, I guess.
I meant to bring this up to you, but NBC did a graphic of undefeated teams and put the Lions and the Cardinals on there.
Technically, they're
correct.
undefeated.
It's correct, but it's also hilarious.
Yeah. And then a guy with a Redskins logo named Jimon Harried says, "Let's be honest, y'all got lucky." Is he talking about the Eagles or you and me?
I mean, we do have great jobs, so...
Yeah, we are lucky guys, and there's a lot of angry Eagles fans responding to them that I'm not going to read. But thanks for commenting, guys. Keep that up. Tweet us questions. I'm at Zack Blatt, Z-A-C-K. He's at Mike_E_K, which doesn't flow off the tongue, but you got to say it like that.
Worst Twitter handle in the world, and I love it.
And I love it. Wait, so is the other guy, is he Mike_K?
I don't know. I haven't really thought into it. I really have never looked.
Do you need the E?
Well, I can't. So I got the Twitter handle like in 2009, like
10 years ago. Congrats.
Yeah, thanks. before I was like
a reporter,
and so like I got my blue check mark with it, and if you switch
the handle,
then you lose.
Talk to Twitter about that.
Yeah.
Twitter, hit us up. I know Jack Dorsey listens to our podcast. So. Anyway, but yeah, thanks for listening, guys. Write us some reviews. Actually, there was a review. So I think I remember the guy's name. His name was Julius Baynard. He left a review, a 5-star review, which we appreciate. And he put a prediction for the Falcons game, but I'm pretty sure he meant for the Redskins game. And he got the score almost exactly right. And he got. He said Deshaun Jackson gets over 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like, that dude deserves, like,
praise
a pizza party, maybe. I don't know.
What? You're open to it? Zack Rosenblatt will show up at your home. He will not pay for the pizza party. You'll have to reimburse him.
Unrelated to this whole thing, I'm just going to show up at your guy's house.
You have to reimburse him for the mileage, but he will show up.
So, Julius, shout out to you. You're the real MVP. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll talk to you later in the week.
Deuces.